Hi Year 10. So this week we're going to be looking after the environment and ways that you can protect the environment. So the first thing that you're going to do is your starter. You're going to have a look at some new vocabulary and you are going to match up in the vocab box the Spanish to the English. It would be worth writing these down. This is some basic vocab to start off, but is also used throughout the whole topic. So obviously if you're looking for the word disconnect, it looks like desconectar. So start with your cognates. Start with the words that look like the English. After that, look for your near cognates that have some similarities with the English. After that, you might have to look for grammatical things. Obviously, if your Spanish word has an IR, ER or AR on the end, it's going to be an infinitive, so that's going to be a verb. So have a think and see whether you can match up some of them. This will probably take you about 2 or 3 minutes, and then once you've done that, move on to the next slide. So you will have already seen some of this vocabulary on the slide before when you did the starter activity. So you've got numbers 1 to 7 and you just need to go through and work out what they all mean, but also find out which one of them words is the intruder in the sentence. So for example, if you have a look at the first one, latas, papel y cartón, basura no reciclable, and botellas. On the right hand side, I've given you the English for these, but they're not in the right order. So the first thing that you're going to need to do is work out what means what. So obviously we can work out that paper and cardboard is papel y cartón. Non-recyclable waste is going to be basura no reciclable. Botellas is bottles, leaving latas as tins. You're going to work it out like that, starting with the ones that are obvious, and then process of elimination for the ones that you don't know. So now you've got to work out which one is the intruder, which one doesn't fit into that category. Paper and cardboard, non-recyclable waste, tins or bottles. So in this case it's going to be basura no reciclable because the rest of the items are recyclable and obviously non-recyclable waste isn't. Moving on to the next one then, I will give you about 1 minute to just look through, see if you can work out what they mean in English. Then I'll give you the English and we'll work out what the intruder is. So we should definitely know this vocabulary. Bicicleta, to go by bike. Ir en coche, go by car. Transporte público, use public transport. And then ir a pie is obviously going to be your last one, go by foot. The intruder in this one, I would say, would be ir a pie because bike, car, public transport, they're all different methods of transport that you need to use as opposed to walking where you don't need anything else. Again, just a minute to see if you can work out any of them. And your options on the right hand side. So we should know a lot of this vocab. We should know energía, which is obviously energy. We should know dinero as money, agua as water. So obviously the only thing we don't know is going to be combustible, which we're going to work out through process of elimination as fuel. So in this case, you've got money, energy, water, fuel. I would say that the odd one out is money. The other things are all things that you'd say for the environment. you'd save energy, water and fuel. Moving on to number 4, a minute, just to see if you can work out what these words mean. And then on the right hand side you've got your English. Obviously irritante is going to be irritating, alarmante, alarming. Then you've got pleasant and worrying. Now the way that I've worked this out is preoccupante in English looks like the word preoccupied, and if you're preoccupied then you're thinking about something else. So I would match that to worrying, and then agradable would be pleasant. The odd one out would be agradable because all of the words are negative, are concern, and then agradable is a positive adjective. Next one should be relatively easy, especially after having done number 4, so just 30 seconds to work out them phrases. So me encanta, we should definitely know is I love. Me irrita, you're going to work out is going to be irritates me. In number 4 we saw preoccupante, which was worrying, so that is going to be it worries me, me preocupa. Leaving me fastidia, as it annoys me. Again, odd one out is going to be the positive, me encanta, me fastidia, me irrita, me preocupa. They're all negative opinions. Number 6, 30 seconds, see if you can work out. So, el contenedor is obviously container. We should know basura as rubbish. And then the other 2 are waste anyway. Los residuos is like residues, waste. And desperdicios, again, both mean waste. The odd one out would be container, because the other 3 talk about rubbish. 30 seconds for number 7. So already 3 of these you should definitely be able to work out because they are cognates, so they look like the English. So protestar is obviously going to be protest, combatir, to combat, aceptar, to accept, and then the one that you didn't know through process of elimination, luchar, which would be to fight. The odd one out, aceptar, to accept. The others are talking about fighting against something, working against something, and then aceptar, to accept, is the opposite. On this slide, you are just working with the new vocabulary that we've been looking at over the past couple of slides. There is some new vocab on here, so you might need to work it out or have a bit of a search to see what it means. You've got them 2 words that you've got the one phrase that we saw from last week, which was se debería, which means you should or one should. Just talking about people in general, what they should be doing. So we've got se debería, you should, and no se debería, which means you shouldn't. What I want you to do is just categorise these words, these phrases and actions into what you should do to look after the environment and what you shouldn't do to look after the environment. It should be pretty straightforward, it'll either be one or the other in this instance. I would write it down. If you don't know the vocab, write down the English as well to support you in future. On this slide, you're going to use the vocabulary that you've been looking at so far, and you're going to complete the reading comprehension. Now, what you need to do is find the words on the right-hand side in the text in Spanish, and then you need to match the sentences in the top left to the titles in the bottom left. So the first thing I'm going to do is give you 2 minutes to find the phrases in the right hand side in the text on the left hand side. The first thing that you are going to be doing is looking for your cognates. So look for the words that look like the English. After that, you're going to go for the vocab that you already know. And then after that, you're going to have to read around the sentences for context and find where you would find that vocabulary in different parts of the sentence. So you've got 2 minutes to do that. So what you're going to start with is the ones that are blatantly obvious and the ones that we'll probably have seen before. So we're going to start with future generations. So number 5, future generations. It's in the first one, las futuras generaciones. Next one, to conserve nature. So up here you've got to conserve nature, and then you've just got to look through for something looking similar, and it's in number 1 again, conservar la naturaleza. To disconnect devices, you've already seen that throughout the PowerPoint, and that is going to be in number 2, desconectar los aparatos. Rechargeable batteries. Rechargeable would look the same, maybe not batteries, so you're looking for something like that, which is in number 5, pilas recargables. So recargable looks like rechargeable. We didn't know the word for batteries, but we've been able to work it out now, pilas. Reuse plastic bags, again, should be relatively easy. So you're looking for plastic. Number 5 again, reutilizar las bolsas de plástico. Then we've got 4 more. Now we should know number 8 purely because we've seen the word rubbish a couple of times in this lesson already. So the amount of rubbish is in number 6, La cantidad. If you think cantidad looks like quantity to some extent, it's a bit of a near cognate, and then basura is rubbish. And we've got 3 left. We're going to look at number 6. If you follow this advice. So we don't know the word follow, we don't know the word advice, but what you are going to need to look at is the grammar. You follow. So if you're talking about you in the present tense, you've got to think about what the ending would be for the present tense. And you'd use the o, as, a, amos, ais, an. So for this instance, it would be either as or es. So you've got to look through, you've got to look for a verb that has the word es or as on the end. So as you scan through, just see if you can find that. And then you're looking at number 6. Si sigues estos consejos. Now that's quite difficult to do because it may take you a bit more time to work through the whole text, but what you need to do is, if you really are struggling, look at the grammar. The only other sorts of things that end in es for you is down here where it says produces, but we know that produce looks like to produce, so that's not going to be the right verb in that instance. And other than that, there's not really many others that end in as or es apart from usas up here, but again, that looks like use. We know that word already, so you've just might take a bit of brain power to work out that one. Then you've got likewise and each time more. They're the ones that I'd really not expect you to be able to work out as easily, so we'll give you the vocab for that now. So each time more, you could probably think of the word like if you were saying sometimes is a veces, so you're looking for something like veces. Each or every day, you can either say todos los días or cada día, which would take you to number 1, cada vez más. We know the word more as well, being más, so that might be, you might be able to find that. And then finally, the last one, a bit more difficult, is going to be likewise. The word for likewise is de igual forma in number 3. So now that you've worked out that vocabulary, you now have to match them 6 summaries to the titles at the bottom. The way you're going to do this is we're going to go through the titles at the bottom first to make it a bit quicker and easier. So if we have a look, we've got ahora agua. We've seen ahora, which with 2 R's means to save. Agua, we know, is water. So this is going to be about saving water. So immediately what we can do is we can look back up into them 6 statements, and you don't need to read them all and you don't need to understand them all. You are just going to glance through and see if you can find words that link to water and saving water. So you might be thinking about the word taps, you might be thinking about showering, having a bath, using water. I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to scan, read for gist, so don't read in detail, literally look for keywords that would link to water, and then we'll match it up. Okay, so as we've seen in the vocabulary we've learnt so far, we've learnt about cerrar los grifos, to turn off the taps, ducha, shower, so it's going to take us to number 3. So basically what they're saying is, likewise, it's important to turn off the taps and shower quickly. 5 minutes will be enough. Okay, the next one, save. Again, we can see the word ahora, so save. Energía, nice and easy, save energy. you're going to do the same thing. You've got 30 seconds, glance through, you're going to be looking for words in the same family linking to energy. So you might be talking about electricity or devices or light bulbs. It's 30 seconds, see if you can work that out. So for this one, I linked it up to number 2. It's talking about bombillas de bajo consumo, so low energy light bulbs, disconnecting devices, not using them so that you're reducing the energy use, you're reducing electricity. Just look at the bottom titles. You've got 8 of them, but you've only got 6 phrases, so you're going to have to be careful with what means what, and there'll be too many. So what we're going to do now is I'm just going to go through the rest of the English, and then you're going to spend about 5 minutes seeing if you can match them up. So, see, reduzcamos. Amos on the end means we. Reduzca looks like reduce. Basura, rubbish. So that's going to be reduce, rubbish. De salvemos la tierra para nuestros hijos. We know that tierra is earth. Hijos, we should know, is children. And salvemos, we save. E might be a bit more difficult. Means what a success. Éxito is a bit of a false friend. It doesn't mean exit, it means success. F, evita, we know is avoid. Contaminación atmosférica, we know is pollution, air contamination. G, so avoid the use of químicos, química, chemicals, chemistry. Avoid the use of chemical products. And then H, recycle and reuse. So you know, if you're watching on YouTube, pause the video. If you are not watching on YouTube, you'll just have to, if you're watching on PowerPoint, you'll just have to pause the sound file, which should be in the bottom right hand corner, and just give yourself some time to work through and see if you can match up another 4 of them titles to the text, and then you can restart it to find out the answers. So as we saw before, ahora agua, save water, is going to match up to 3. Save energy, B, is going to match up to 2. We're not going to use C, we're going to move on to D, which is save the earth for our children. Our children is going to link to future generations and talking about what you can do to help the environment. So that's going to be 1. Que éxito, E, is going to be 6, because they're saying what can happen, not just about rubbish, so that's why it's not going to be C. And there's nothing about any of the other things. It's about a mix. It's about electricity, it's about water, it's about rubbish, it's about trees. So it's talking about a success of how much would be saved. F, talking about air contamination, pollution, is going to be 4. G, we're not going to use. And then H, recycle and reuse, is going to be 5, because it's talking about separating rubbish, which is your recycling, reusing plastic bags, and using rechargeable batteries. So there are your answers. On this slide, what you're going to do is you're going to match up the two halves of the sentences. So you've got the first half saying, if you do this, the second half will say what the effect will be on the environment. You're going to use the vocab that we've already worked with, so it should be relatively easy. You're going to start by looking for your cognates or the words that you already know. So if you have a look at number 2, you've got recyclas, which is recycle. You have got papel, which is paper. We know carton, which is cardboard. So if you recycle paper and cardboard, what will happen? So you've got to think what will happen. Right, the first one, A, is talking about air contamination. It's probably not going to be that. The second one's talking about water, so it can't be that. The third one is talking about saving trees. Could be that. The fourth one is talking about conserving the earth for future generations. No. Fifth one is talking about electricity. No. And the sixth one is talking about you'll reduce the amount of rubbish you produce. Could be that, but it's probably going to link to C, because it's talking specifically about paper and cardboard, which would affect trees. You're going to work through it like that because that's going to be the quickest way to do it without having to translate everything in the sentences. Once you've done this, write them down, make sure you've matched them up, make sure they make sense, and just to make sure they make sense, you're going to translate them into English. By translating them into English, you make sure that the two halves of the sentences match in context. Another thing that you're going to have to look out for is in the first part of the sentence, look at your verbs. So your verbs here might end in as, as, as. Okay? But then you've also got one that ends in emos. Now the difference between them is the ones that end in as or es are the ones that are talking about you. If you do this, if you do that. However, if it has emos or amos on the end, then we're talking about we. That is going to translate through to the right hand side as well, because as you can see, you've got ayudarás, ahorrarás, salvarás, but then you've got conservaremos. So immediately we know that 6 is going to match up to D purely through the grammatical format of the sentence, because you're talking about we. I'd spend about 5 minutes doing this, match up the halves of the sentence, and then translate the phrases. These are going to be useful to use in a piece of work that you're going to be doing at the end of the lesson. Our main grammar focus on this lesson is if clauses, which we've not formally done before. No class has formally learnt about it. However, it's considered to get you extra marks in exam conditions, in your speaking and in your writing, because you're using 2 different tenses and you're using 2 different clauses. So you've already worked with these on the last slide. By putting them 2 halves of the sentence together, you had your if clause, which was if you do this, and then you had your main clause, this will happen. So this is what we're going to be working with and practicing this lesson, and it's also going to be what your Show My Homework quiz will be based on for a part. So the first part is going to be the present tense. Now remember, with the present tense, the way that we form it is we take our infinitive. So if we take the second one, which is if you recycle. So the way that we've got there is we've taken our infinitive, which is reciclar. Then we've taken off our AR. Normally we'd add an O to talk about ourselves, but in this case we've added AS to talk about you. So instead of saying I recycle, we've said you recycle. If you recycle, you will do this. So that's how you're going to form the first clause. You can also, instead of saying if you can say if we. So you might want to say, instead of if you recycle, you might want to change it to if we recycle by adding amos. Same as the bottom ones, cerramos los grifos, if we turn off the taps. You might want to say if you turn off the taps. So instead of cerramos, it would be cerras, using the AS. So as I've pointed out at the bottom, it's either going to be your AS and ES ending for you, or your amos, emos, emos ending for we. So that's always going to be your first half of the sentence. After that, you're going to use the future tense. Now remember, we've got two different future tenses. If you're in 10A3, 10A2 or 10B1, you may have come across both of these, but the one that you will focus and the one that you will have learned more consistently over the years will be the near future tense, which is here at the bottom. Now that is, normally we see that as voy a, and then your infinitive. So that would be voy a ahorrar, I am going to save. Voy a reciclar, I am going to recycle. But in this case, like we've done before, is we've changed it to vamos or vas. So if you're using vamos, it's going to be we are going to save. If you're using vas, it's going to be you are going to save. Remember that the first half of the sentence has to match with the second half. So if you look over here, you've got si cerramos, and then it's vamos. Si desconectas, vas. It sounds the same. It's got to be the same in both clauses for it to be grammatically correct and for you to get marks for this higher level structure. Now, if you are confident with using the near future tense, that's great. Try and move on to the true future if you have already come across it. So in 10A1 especially, that does not mean just use the true future. It means if you've already used one if clause with the true future, use another if clause with the near future, because the more tenses you're using, the higher level you are going to get. If you have a look, the true future is the infinitive plus as or the infinitive plus emos. The good thing is, throughout all of these tenses, you can see the endings are the same. In the present tense, if you are talking about you, it's going to be as, as, as. It's going to look the same. If you are using we in all of the tenses, it's going to be that mos on the end throughout all of them. Regardless of what tense it is, it's just how you form them that'll be different. So you can see here that for the true future tense, you've got your infinitive. So remember, your infinitive is the word ending in AR, ER or IR, and then you've got your ending. So you might say if you have different recycling containers, you will recycle more. So you'd get your infinitive, which is reciclar. If I wanted to say you will recycle, it will be reciclarás. If I want to say we will recycle, it will be reciclaremos. So it depends who you want to talk about. Using this structure will also get you marks for talking about the third person, because, talking about other people, instead of just saying I do this, I do that, I will do this, you're able to talk about other people, whether it be you or we. So if you've already used an if clause using you, try and use another one using we. You might want to say, if you do this, this will happen, and this is what we should do to save the environment. But you might say, but actually, in my house, my family and I do this, which is bad. So if we do start to recycle, then we will save the earth, or we will save more trees. On this slide, what I've done is given you a table with different tenses. Now I've given you the present tense, the near future tense, and the true future tense, which is what we have just worked on the previous slide. I have given you 8 different verbs, 8 different infinitives on the left hand side: to recycle, to save, to reuse, to separate, to disconnect, to use, to save, and to turn off. Just note that there's a difference between ahorrar, meaning to save, and salvar. Ahorrar means to save, as in to not misuse, not overuse. Salvar means to save, as in to save a life, or to save nature, or humans or animals, things like that. Ahorrar is more to save, as in to not waste. So you've got the three different tenses, but again, you've got two different columns for your different tenses. We've got ones for you and ones for we. I want you to be able to practice putting these verbs into the different tenses, but also into the different personal pronoun, pronouns, so who you're talking about. I've also already filled in a lot of the gaps, so all you need to do is follow the gaps throughout all of them, follow the patterns so that you can fill in the gaps. Once you have done this, you will be able to see the answers on the next slide. On this slide, we're just going to put the if clauses into practice. Now, there's three different options. You're either going to do the green, the orange, or the red. I would say that if you've struggled with the if clauses and you can form the near future tense, which is the voy, a, plus the infinitive, then do the first one. Make sure you're using all the vocab that you've been using throughout the lesson to help you. I would do the green if you aren't confident with the true future and if you are okay with the near future. If you are okay with the near future and you want to start getting some practice at the true future, which you may not have used as much in your lessons, do the orange one. They are all the same sentences, but you're just changing them instead of the near future, true future. Finally, if you feel like they're a bit too easy, if you're in 10A1, I would be expecting you to do number 1 because of all the other things that you've learned over the past year. Also, if you want a challenge, if you are in any of the other classes, by all means, give the red translation a go. There are some more challenging structures and vocab in that translation. Just for 10A1, I want to point out what you did in your lesson a couple of weeks ago about the subjunctive. If you have a look, you've actually got the subjunctive to look out for and to translate to make sure that you know how to form that from last time you did it. So if you have a read through, you're going to find the subjunctive in the final phrase, which says, therefore, it is important that we help to save. So your subjunctive phrase is going to be here, we help. That's going to be in the subjunctive because it is important that is going to be es importante, K, which starts the subjunctive. Once you've done this, translate them into Spanish and your answers are on the next page. So finally for this lesson, remember this lesson is over a fortnight. Your lessons will be over a fortnight from now on, to give you enough time to make sure you have the time to learn, to complete the quizzes on Show My Homework, and to do the piece of writing that you're going to be expected to do now. So what I want you to do is to write about how we should look after the environment. I have put the different grades 4 to grade 7 and above, and in each of them boxes I have put exactly what you need to be doing to get that grade. Now remember, if you do everything in the grade 4 box apart from the past tense, then you're not going to get that grade 4, because remember, you need past, present and future to be able to access that grade 4. Everyone at this point should be able to access at least one past tense, one present tense and one future tense. If you're struggling with that, have a look back at the work that we did previously on tenses so that you know how to form them. Don't overcomplicate it, just make sure that if you're using the preterite tense, for example, it's going to be your infinitive. So your infinitive is your AR, ER, IR. So for example, let's use recyclar as an example. You take off the AR because for past tenses you always take off the ending, and then you add E with an accent. It can be E with an accent, or if it's an IR verb, so say if you, or an ER verb, if you wanted to say I used or I consumed, consumir is the infinitive. You take off the IR, and instead of E with an accent, you put I with an accent on the end. That's just a recap of your past tense because we've already recapped the near future tense in this lesson. Obviously, if you've used the imperfect tense instead of the preterite tense, that's fine. If you use the near future instead of the true future, again, that is fine. But just make sure as a whole that your work includes these features from each of the grades. Think about your target grade, think about where you were last formally working when you were in lesson. Now I know for a lot of 10A1 we were working towards the grade 6s, 7s and some of you reaching towards 8s. If you did understand the subjunctive from last week's lesson, you can definitely be achieving up to a grade 8 with this. If you're in 10A 2, 3 and 10B1, there's a mixed grade in the classes. Grade 4s to grade 6, definitely. Even if you were working at a grade 3, just make sure you're trying to use the past, present and future so that you can get up to a grade 4, because you will have learnt it in your lesson. Mr. Nero and Miss Crompton have both said that all classes in year 10, they are able to form at least a past, a present and a future tense. So again, a grade 4 we'd like to look at as our minimum, but don't overcomplicate it. You can still get a grade 4 by writing quite basic sentences. Just make sure you're including all of that criteria. If you are in Miss De Niro or Miss Crompton's class and you think, right, well actually no, I'm really happy with where what I've been doing in Spanish, and actually from some of the work that we've been seeing that's been handed in, there are definitely people in them classes, even if you are in A3 or B1 or A2, that are working towards grade 6s and grade 7s. By all means, push yourself. This is not specific to just 10A1. Same with 10A1. If you're struggling, bring it down to a grade 5 if you need to, just to make sure that you are securing the main things that are going to get you a secure grade 5, because you always run the risk of overcomplicating it by trying to get higher level structures in, but actually if it's not understood by the examiner, it's not going to get the grade. So just take your time with it. I would say spend about 30 minutes on this. Remember, it's over the 2 weeks, so this lesson probably would have taken you just under an hour because we've spoken through what you need to do. Maybe about 20 to 30 minutes to write a really good, clear response, which is structured, and see which grade you can work towards. And then that will be submitted on Show My Homework. So now all that you need to do is complete the Show My Homework quiz, which is the same, Cómo se debería cuidar del medio ambiente. In that, you're going to practice and you're going to be tested on the vocab from this lesson, the if clauses, verb conjugation, just to see how much of it you've understood. After you've done that, just upload any work that you've done in your green pens, like the if clause translations, the reading comprehension, the sentence matchup. But the main thing that we'd like you to hand in, just to make sure that you're keeping up to date with your Spanish, and so we can just make sure everyone's understanding what they need to, and if anything else needs to be put in place to help you, or maybe do a bit more work on. Take a picture of your writing task and upload it to show my homework. And obviously, as a lot of you will be seeing, a lot of them are being put on the MFL Instagram page, as we've been receiving some really good examples of work over the past couple of weeks.